does the Bible describe the reign of Rehoboam and why? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Kings on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Kings chapter 14, verses 21 to 31. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 1 Kings chapter 14, verse 21. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Kings chapter 14, beginning at verse 21. And Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he became king. He reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord had chosen out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. His mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. Now Judah did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins which they committed, more than all that their fathers had done. For they also built for themselves high places, sacred pillars, and wooden images on every high hill and under every green tree. And there were also perverted persons in the land. They did according to all the abominations of the nations which the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. It happened in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. And he took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. He took away everything. He also took away all the gold shields which Solomon had made. Then King Rehoboam made bronze shields in their place, and committed them to the hands of the captains of the guard, who guarded the doorway of the king's house. And whenever the king entered the house of the Lord, the guards carried them, then brought them back into the guardroom. Now the rest of the acts of Rehoboam, and all that he did, are they not written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all their days. So Rehoboam rested with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. Then Abijam, his son, reigned in his place. When last we saw Rehoboam, he was being commanded by God not to go and fight the north in order to reunify the kingdom of Judah with Judah. What had been done was of the Lord, and there was nothing Rehoboam could do to change that. In the interim, we discussed the 22-year reign of Jeroboam in Israel. It was completely evil, with idolatry being set up throughout the land, including altars in Dan and Bethel. It was so bad that God would dispossess the house of Jeroboam of the throne and would promise Israel's future captivity for their sins. Coming back down to Judah, we're not going to find the situation is much better. In verse 21, we return to our timeline at about 930 BC and find out that at the beginning of his reign, Rehoboam was 41 years old. That means, depending on the actual length of Solomon's reign, it could have been slightly more or less than 40 years, that Rehoboam was either born just before Solomon took the throne or just after. We find out that his mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. This is important for two reasons. The first is we find out that Solomon's polygamy began right from the beginning of his reign, for we know from 1 Kings 3 that Solomon also married the daughter of Pharaoh at the beginning of his reign, and in fact made part of his palace specifically for her. So that Solomon's polygamy was not a result of some middle-age craziness, but happened right from the start, is important in assessing his overall character. The second thing we learn is that Rehoboam's mother was an Ammonitess. When it comes to the kings of Judah, we're often going to read of their mothers, most likely due to the fact that the queen mother held a rather large role among the kings of Judah. Bathsheba did during the reign of Solomon, and it appears this continued on down the line. I would like us to recall, though, that it was wives from among the Ammonites that helped turn Solomon's heart away from the Lord, so now we get a name for one of those wives. That Rehoboam's mother was an Ammonitess also helps explain the character of Rehoboam, which was evil. He would reign for 17 years over Judah, which was less than Jeroboam would reign over Israel, and it was marked with rampant evil throughout the land. Judah built for herself high places, sacred pillars, and wooden images everywhere to worship. They even had temple prostitutes in their idol temples, some of which practiced homosexuality and abomination before the Lord. Now, Judah couldn't lean back on Jeroboam's excuse for idolatry of not wanting the people to travel to another country to worship, for the temple of God was in Judah's capital of Jerusalem. No, Judah's debauchery started late in the days of Solomon and continued on down through Rehoboam. How bad did it get? Well, in the 5th year of Rehoboam, God used Pharaoh Shishak of Egypt, who is often associated with Pharaoh Shishak I, to come and ransack Judah, taking away all the wealth that Solomon had accumulated. So, now not only was Rehoboam reduced in the amount of land he ruled over, which was just Judah, but he wasn't a wealthy king at that, with Israel losing to a foreign king for really the first time since Saul lost to the Philistines at Mount Gilboa some 85 years before. All of the treasures of the temple, all of the treasures of the king's house, including the gold shield Solomon made, were now gone. In their place, Rehoboam made his guards bronze shields, which was even worse than silver shields, showing us just how much wealth was lost. If you remember, Solomon saw silver as nothing because he had so much gold. Well, now Rehoboam could really count silver as nothing, for he had none to speak of. Losing to Shishak made Judah vulnerable to attack going forward, as we'll see in our future studies. It is said that Rehoboam and Jeroboam were at war all their days. This isn't likely talking about a full-scale war, for that was forbidden in chapter 12, but it is likely meaning that they had skirmishes here and there, and there were hostilities between the two houses all their days. But unlike Israel, Judah would have some good kings that would bring Judah back from idolatry. It wouldn't be Rehoboam's son that would do this, but it would be his grandson who would do this for the first time. 1 Kings' discussion of Rehoboam's reign is rather short, likely due to how evil he was, and how relatively short his reign was compared with David's and Solomon's reigns. But with Rehoboam reigning for 17 years, this brings our timeline down from 930 BC to 913 BC. After Rehoboam died, Abijam, his son, reigned in his stead. We'll see his reign, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 1 to 8, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.